Recently has been talked about how the far right is using this phrase Judeo-Christian tradition
Yeah.
in order to define what's authentically British, what's kind of indigenous and part of who we are, and by implication, what's other
Yeah.
and not part of who we are. And it's quite an insidious distinction that's made.
Absolutely. This is used deliberately to other Muslims.
Mm.
And so that made me start to think about it. And, specifically in Islam, in the Quran, it does refer to the commonalities, but this contrived commonality between Jewish faith and Christian was designed, as far as I was concerned, to keep the Muslims to one.
It's also a common parlance amongst people who basically don't go to church anyway.
Yeah.
So their credentials as Christians is one of pragmatic convenience rather than any form of faith commitment.
Yeah, when Tommy Robinson and others use the phrase Judeo-Christian, they know nothing about Judeo or Christian, and there they are bandying this phrase around.
Yeah. People like John Cleese, a comedy actor who's still a prominent public figure who's wheeled out as being a great fellow, can spend most of his days, now that he's no longer getting gigs as a comedian or a comedy writer, just spouting out nonsense about Sharia law or whatever it is, or not being allowed to walk his dog. And it's like, where does this come from?
It is fantasy, but it's worrying.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, if you've got mainstream characters like that, who are they're everybody is familiar with them and feels that, what's the word when you think they're inoffensive, they're just nice people. He's a nice old man, and what could he possibly say that's untoward? And whatever he does say, it's common sense. It's coming from a good place, and all these assumptions that we make about certain people. And I often say that you can. If you caricature people, you've got the Muslim leader in his military uniform who's obviously a dictator and therefore up to no good. You can have somebody who's white and Western and wearing a suit who could be responsible for the death of millions, but because of the way he comes across, he will inevitably be regarded in more favourable light by us than the guy with the military uniform on.